back at about 8:30, and that is my cue. I cannot tell you, even wrap some of what has been said there, because one of the phrases used there is that there is a situationship. A situationship is what Sarah-Jane Trent could possibly have been involved in with the former IPID head, Robert McBride. And so my situationship right now demands that I hand over to my colleague, Qodashe Msomi, who is going to briskly take you to the latest headlines at the top of 8, because it is 8 on the dot. Qodashe, it's all yours. I'm gone.
Well, certainly this situationship is going to continue right at 8:30 when that parliamentary ad hoc committee comes back with Sarah-Jane Trent, the former assistant to Paul O'Sullivan. We heard from him earlier on today, taking those questions from members of parliament, as well as answering to why it is that he walked out last week. So you don't want to miss any of those discussions. But for now, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with your headlines after this. So there was attraction. Way. Hi, Zoleka. Qodashe, can you hear me?
As the chair said, you were friends with Benedict.
Hi, Qodashe, I can hear you. Hello, can Qodashe hear me?
I can hear you, my darling. Looking lovely in your peach situationship.
I'm just noticing that you've gotten tired of asking me if I'm well.
No, Nix Kanchan.
You know.
Yeah, no shame. I can feel you. I can feel you. Ad hoc parliamentary members with Sarah-Jane from 8:30.
A minute back.
Is she going to survive, though? Oh, guys, why am I... Welcome back. Let's now take you back to Parliament, where we find our reporter Zoleka Qodashe is standing by with the latest for us, and this is in relation to the testimony that we just heard from Sarah-Jane Trent. A very good evening to you, Zoleka. Quite a way to end off that testimony. We are expecting for the parliamentary ad hoc members at 8:30 to now continue questioning Sarah-Jane Trent. She struggled a bit with regards to that statement, breaking down here and there. Will she be able to hold up with the questions from the members of parliament?
That is the question that was put by EFF leader Julius Malema, asking about the fitness of the witness to actually continue with her evidence in chief, as she has not at this stage concluded giving her testimony before the parliamentary ad hoc committee. So what we saw that previously unfolded was the evidence leader, advocate Bongiwe Mkhize, asking her a variety of questions in relation to what is contained in her statement. And what we saw is that her statement contains various provisions of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate Act, that is the IPID Act. And what she sought to do there, we suspect, is to justify some of her conduct in relation to her interactions with officials from IPID. And that is where she then faced a series of questions from lawmakers as they sought to gain clarity over what is contained in her statement. And that is when that interaction in relation to the provisions of the statute, as well as what Sarah-Jane Trent says justifies her actions for lawmakers, did not reconcile. And she points us to Section 24 of the IPID Act. Now, we previously read Section 24, subsection 3A. We're going to go to another provision now. That is Section 24, subsection 3B. Of the Act, and see whether this is what Sarah-Jane Trent sought to have justify her conduct with officials from IPID. And what this provision says is that an investigator or any person duly authorized thereto by him or her may request an explanation from any person whom he or she reasonably suspects of having information which has a bearing on a matter being or to be investigated. Now, this Sarah-Jane Trent says is what essentially assisted, or rather the provision that she says is what she relied upon in assisting members or officials from IPID in conducting their investigations. But the EFF's Julius Malema, in fact, this was the general consensus within the room, is that lawmakers are not convinced that this particular provision is applicable to what Sarah-Jane Trent sought to demonstrate before the inquisitorial body, because what they say is that she was not assisting them with information when they actually went to Khomotso Phahlane, the former acting National Police Commissioner's home in Sable Hills, when they had that interaction with the estate manager, also with that interaction with his driver in relation to personal information insofar as it relates to Khomotso Phahlane, because you'll remember they also required those building plans, and it was the evidence or the testimony of former state prosecutor yesterday, that is Advocate Michael Mashucha, who said that it was Paul O'Sullivan that threatened the Yosta, that is now Chris Yosta, that showed them those particular plans. He threatened him with about 2 years, nothing less than 2 years imprisonment. And whether Paul O'Sullivan actually had the authority to make such claims, and it's not only that, Katlego, also the fact that this particular issue that was being investigated by IPID is the very same issue in which Paul O'Sullivan had laid a complaint with IPID prior to Robert McBride reassuming office in around 2015, 2016. You remember that the Constitutional Court reviewed and set aside his suspension, and then he was reinstated in that position as Executive Director at IPID in 2016. And so that is the realm in which the inquisitorial body is maneuvering at this particular point. And the question about whether Paul O'Sullivan can be a complainant as well as an investigator in a matter is also something that lawmakers sought to probe. But in terms of the provisions for which Sarah-Jane Trent, his former assistant, relied upon in the conduct that she exhibited when she was interacting with IPID officials is also something that was called into question. Let's take a listen.
There is nowhere in the Act where it talks about assistance, as you allege. Hence, Oronomvalo is expressly taking you to explanation, because the Act speaks about explanation, not assistance. But I think we must implore you to calm down. I'm worried that you are a bit nervous, and it makes it very difficult for us to get there. Chair, can we take at least 5 minutes a break to calm down? I'm worried that we would not be able to extract evidence from a witness this nervous. So if we can cool down a little bit, Chair. Thank you so much.
Now, Qodashe, you'll also remember that that is essentially why we had to take that adjournment, because the witness did seem to be quite emotional. And in fact, even after proceedings resumed, did continue having those moments of being emotional. And also what was being put to her prior to the break is an alleged relationship that she may have had with the former executive director at IPID, Robert McBride, and whether it was platonic or was a romantic relationship. And in fact, she says it was a semi-social relationship, and that there was nothing wrong in the things that she was doing, and also say, or that in that relationship, also saying that they would meet for informal dinners as well as coffee. And so that is also something that lawmakers, we expect, will be zooming into, because you'll remember that Robert McBride, in fact, when he appeared before the inquisitorial body, I think I remember him saying that she was a very close confidant. So whether that is in alignment with what Sarah-Jane Trent has said. And also, you'll remember that Sarah-Jane Trent has told the inquisitorial body that she did not write statements or subpoenas for IPID, and instead that was being done by IPID itself. But I think we remember that Robert McBride had also said that Sarah-Jane Trent was actually a very good investigator, or rather a researcher, and she did say that she did a lot of desktop research. Now, how Robert McBride would know that Sarah-Jane Trent was such a good researcher, rather, if she was not intricately involved in the work of IPID and in its investigations, we expect that lawmakers will be probing her on. And also the arrest that was effected on her around the 10th of February 2017, we also expect that that is also something that she will be asked about, because she says that she was abducted, but there is an order from the lower court essentially giving an arrest warrant, or giving IPID the permission to conduct somewhat of a search and seizure on her property. So we expect to get more details around that. But she says that she was abducted and that that was not lawful. So we expect that lawmakers will be asking her those questions, because if that is the case, she would not have had access to a cell phone to call an attorney, for example. And those details we expect she will be able to accentuate further when she faces questions from lawmakers. We're expecting to resume with proceedings at 8:30.
All right, Zoleka Qodashe bringing us the latest from the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee.